Ahoy, hoy, everyone on this Saturday night. Yes, I'm finally doing a live stream on Saturday. You all said you wanted one, so here I am. So far, it's just Darth, but we'll see who else comes in. How you doing, Darth?
Doing well, Shane. How are you?
Oh, I'm all right. Anything in particular you feel like talking about tonight, or?
Maybe we could talk a little bit about Squirrel. I think we're getting pretty close to release,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, just before I set this up, Steve Gibson announced he just posted the first release of Squirrel meant for like the general public, version 1.0. Angry Fro Moon in the chat room. He's going to try to get in here and join us, but he's having mic issues. But yeah, hopefully we're finally getting this out. I was going to wait for him to do his official announcement. He was going to go on the Twit network and show it to Leo Laporte and a bunch of people there and try to get them interested. And kind of once he does that official one, I was going to start hitting it hard and heavy.
So is this kind of like a Bitcoin thing where you can have multiple public-private key pairs for pretty much every site?
The way it works is it's not like a cryptocurrency because there's no blockchain or other central repository or anything like that. There doesn't need to be. But what it does is you have the Squirrel app with it. In a sense, it's like a Bitcoin wallet because you have it locked on your device and then it has this master key that it uses. But what it does is it mixes that key with the website's domain name. And so it generates a unique key for each site you log into. And the only identifier your site has is a public key. So, I mean, if you're talking about cryptocurrency, like, a Bitcoin address is a public key. You can get that to anyone in the world and they can't steal your funds. Well, if a hacker hacks into the website and gets your Squirrel public key, they can't do anything with it. And they can't even associate you to different sites because it's going to generate a different one for each site.
Yeah.
But it does that with no blockchain or other third party ever required.
Have you used Facebook's secret chat feature?
I have only been on Facebook like a couple of times in the past few months. I've just pretty much stopped using it. I've been trying to keep like the podcast and Lord Killian videos posted to those pages. And man, it just gives me hell every time I try to post them. Things don't work. Links don't paste in right. I don't know what it's doing to me. And I don't even know if that many people are
like mine.
Yeah. Well, I actually got an alternative to show you, but yeah, I don't even know if that actually that many. If you people are on Facebook and want me to do Facebook, let me know in the comments, and I'll make more of an effort to do that. But I just don't think there are that many people. Let me show you this. They just flipped the switch on this yesterday. Hang on just 1 second. Okay, you see that? This is the new site for BitTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's a full social media site. You've got, let's say, I mean, you've got things like Facebook statuses, and you've got audio and video. You got pictures. Let's see, you can come over here to explore. If I come to the top, I can say just see videos, and I can get kind of like a YouTube type layout there. I'm not on it yet where I can post it. Anyone can just get on there as a guest and kind of explore around there. Right now, you can only post if you've staked 25,000 tubes. In 2 weeks, they'll open it up for those of us who have staked 2,500 tubes, and so I'll be able to get on then. Except that's when I'm on vacation, of course. Oh yeah, I meant to announce that. I meant to announce that first thing. Because next Saturday is mine and Heather's 4th wedding anniversary. And so we're going to go on vacation for that. There'll be a podcast next week, but there won't be for 2 weeks after that. And I'm going to try to get enough videos queued up to keep you all going on the channel through then. But yeah.
Well, happy anniversary.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, but people are getting on here and having fun and making like a million suggestions. So things are going to change. They've already said this was the first thing I asked them. There's going to be a dark theme. I love dark themes. But yeah, and this is
What do you
you
think?
make money just by browsing the website, just looking around, doing all these things. You're making money while you browse it, and so is the person you're browsing, and you can leave them tips or whatever. So
What do you
yeah.
think of Minds.com?
Uh well, I've was it Minds or Gab? I think it was Gab they said was going to start allowing videos, so I might take a second look at it then. Minds, I'm not really sure. Because you look at things like Minds, and you look at Steam it and things like that, and you think, is this just a coin faucet for the devs? You know, that's kind of what I think, especially Steam. I mean, Steve, they will downvote your ass and bury you, too quick to talk about. And they say there's no censorship. No, there's censorship. I've tried posting things and they've been buried within like an hour.
So BitTube has a currency.
Oh yeah, it's always had a currency, and that's how you get paid. You get
What's
paid
like
in
the
the.
exchange rate?
I looked earlier today. I think it was 4.4 cents per tube or something like that. So I mean, it's cool. You just like if you have the extension installed, you can go to someone's YouTube channel and just hit donate tubes. Even if they haven't signed up, it'll go ahead and put it into a wallet for them, and it'll be there when they sign up. So, but yeah, they've got these
Yeah, I
little
just don't.
pages that explain everything.
I mean, in 2019, there's really no central monopolies on social media now. There's so many other alternatives.
Yeah, but I think from everything I've seen, BitTube is really the only one who's doing it right because they didn't have an ICO, they didn't have a pre-mine. The devs just get paid a small part of the mining reward, so they have skin in the game, but they don't have like other than just being the developers, they don't have like any special privileged access to anything. So I mean, they're a small group, and they're really dedicated to making this work.
Do you program, Shane? You a coder?
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of that lately. I might brush off some of my skills in the summer because what was it we were? Oh, we were looking at. We're talking about doing a WordPress extension for Squirrel, and
Oh, nice.
I've never developed a WordPress extension before, so I don't know anything about that. I'd have to learn. So unless
What
someone
languages
who
do you do?
Oh, let's see. I've done C and C++, JavaScript, PHP, Python. I mean, pretty much the usual suspects, I guess.
Do you have a GitHub?
Yes, I do. I'd have to look it up. There's only a couple of things there. I'm working on an RFC for Squirrel to propose it as a proper web standard, but it's going to have to wait until Steve gets the documentation up to scratch, and because he's writing, because an RFC, if you're a technical person and you want to know like how to write a user agent for the web that connects to a web server, you can look at the RFC and get every last little technical detail you could ever possibly want. If you're not a technical person, you might as well be watching that Turbo Encabulator video. They have nothing in there about the reasons things are done, the why of it. The explanations for non-technical people is just, here's this, and then this comes, and then this is the response. And there's nothing about, or not much at least, about the concepts behind it. And he says he's writing the documentation, so it's going to start off. You can just, if you don't know anything about it and you're not a techie or anything, you can just start off reading it, and it'll give you the basics and tell you what you need to know. And then it gets more and more technical as it goes. So I mean, it'll end up being at the end of it. If you read through the whole thing and you're technically minded, then you'll have everything you need to know to write your own client or server or anything like that. But If not, if you're just a regular user, you just drop out at the point where you've already learned what you need to learn. So.
Can this be used for like Windows logon, or is it pretty much just restricted to websites?
Well, what they're doing now with the Windows logon is they're having you log on with your Microsoft account. And so if Microsoft put Squirrel, on their server for Microsoft accounts, then yeah, that would work. But if you're talking about just a local login, it can't do that right now. I have kind of the beginnings of a protocol to allow that to happen, but that would have to wait for, Squirrel 2.0 or whatever. Get the first one out the door before we, go adding on a bunch of other stuff. But I mean, there are ways that we could design, and I've got kind of a preliminary design out there for that. Like if you wanted to use it on your Veracrypt volumes instead of using a password for those, if you wanted to use Squirrel to secure those, but there's no web server there. How do you do that? Because Squirrel is based around the domain name. So I've got a proposal for that, but we'll have to see. Not right now, but get it out first.
My friend gave me a Windows 10 laptop, and I tried installing Veracrypt on it, and it pretty much bricked the machine. I don't know why.
Wow.
So
what
I'm
happened?
thinking I'm going to have to use BitLocker.
Were you trying to...
I went through the process of sending... What's that?
You cut out. Were you trying to encrypt the system volume?
I was just trying... Sorry. I believe so, yeah. Yeah, and it just wouldn't boot. It just stuck on the BIOS screen.
There's Angry. Yes, that sounds more like a BIOS thing than a Veracrypt thing. I think there were some compatibility issues there. Great to have you on finally, Angry.
Yeah, it's been a long time in the making, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, Angry is like my Uber moderator on the Discord.
Lack of a social life gives superpowers.
That's how it goes.
Yeah, I do random stuff, so it works. It works out for moderating, I guess.
Cool.
So
yeah, Darth and I have just been talking about whatever. You got anything on your mind tonight?
Oh, nothing in particular. I'm more of a backseat thinker, if you will. Unusual thoughts come through my head, and I might bring them up.
Okay. Well, we'll have random mess from Angry tonight.
What I do.
So now Trump is going after suppressors. Great.
Yeah, I mean, all you really need to do is look at the video that I made about, oh God, what are those women called on daytime TV? Whoopi Goldberg and all them.
I can't remember.
The View. Yeah. They went on and on about silencers, and I made a video correcting them. And I think Donald Trump made every single one of the same mistakes that they did. Because it doesn't work like you see in the movies. It doesn't, hush it down to where you just get this nice little, that hardly anyone hears. No. It's still loud.
Just saved your hearing.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's still louder than a jackhammer.
Yeah.
Yorkshire MGTOW, always, you people are always like asking the questions that are going to start major fights among us, I think. He says, do you guys think the free market could protect the rights of animals, or would we still need government intervention? I think there's an assumption in there. Before that, you should ask, should we protect the rights of animals?
I don't know. I know this is an area that you and I disagree on, Shane, because we use different metrics on where rights should be determined.
Well, because my view is that rights and responsibilities go hand in hand. And so if you're not at the point where you can be responsible for your actions, yeah.
Well, I would say that rights the line that we need to draw where rights comes from the capacity of free will. Maybe not free will in itself, but at least the capacity of it. Because, you need to think like someone in a coma needs to still has rights in a sense because they have that capacity to act. And animals do have that capacity as well. So I would say that they do have rights. And at that point...
Well, I think they might have it, in a more limited sense because, a dog can let you know that he doesn't like, being hit or whatever. He can turn around and, snap at you or bite you or whatever. And insofar as he can do that, and insofar as he's capable of defending himself, then I think you can say, okay, dogs have a right not to be abused like that. But at the same time, what point would it be saying that a dog has the right to freedom of the press or the right to keep and bear arms or something like that?
Well, I mean, like I don't know. I always see rights as kind of like a passive ability sort of thing. So like, I am capable of bearing arms, so I have the right to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I think it's a little more than that. I think it's like a chimpanzee could probably hold a firearm and might even figure out how to fire it. I'm not sure I want to give chimpanzees the right to keep and bear arms because I'm not sure they can be responsible with it, Yeah.
Like giving a gun to a blind person.
Yeah. I'm not sure I want to go giving guns to chimpanzees because I'm not sure they can be responsible with it. They have to be able to understand the nature and consequences of their actions so that they don't use it to aggress against others.
Yeah, I can see that. But at the same time, it's like, well, if a chimpanzee is, what's the way to put it? If a chimpanzee is able to at least understand on a fundamental level that my actions do have consequences, in the sense that I pull the trigger, there's a loud bang, and there's a hole in the direction that I point. I mean, what's the Jordan Peterson way of looking at it? Once you realize that you can do harm to others, it becomes extraordinarily scary. And I don't know. There's a lot that I would have to think on because usually it's just stuff off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, because when I'm going from first principles, I talk about, what sapience is and, what it means to, why you have to have rights are about sapient entities. But I don't think there's like a switch where, a certain point in your evolution, you go from being completely non-sapient to fully sapient. And I think that's also true of our development as individuals. I mean, I wouldn't give a 2-year-old the right to keep and bear arms either, because again, they can't understand the nature and consequences of any actions they might commit with a firearm. They don't understand death, or, they don't have the emotional or intellectual maturity to understand it or be responsible with it.
Well, I guess it kind of puts up an interesting question. Should more intelligent people have more rights at that point?
Because it's not really about intelligence. I mean, someone with a 90 IQ can still understand the consequences of his action. He can still understand, hey, if I point a gun at someone and pull the trigger, it can cause lethal force, and I can understand, why, dying is bad and stuff like that. So it's not really about intelligence.
Well, like, I would have to say, because I know your standard is sapience, right?
Yeah.
And how would you define sapience in a way that applies to humans but not animals?
Well, it was basically what I just said, understanding the nature and consequences of your actions and being able to predict ahead of time, what actions have aggressive outcomes and which ones don't.
I mean, I would argue that almost any animal can understand that if you're going to be violent towards something, that they have the capacity of being violent back. I'm thinking, I don't know, I just saw it a couple days ago, so it's in my head. There's a image of a video of this little kitten attacking a dog, and the dog snaps back at it and it just comes back, and that's just trying to play coy, I guess. But it's kind of the idea that it's an action and a consequence, and in that case it's more for fun in the cat's perspective, but it's still like understanding that the dog is being violent back, but it's kept in a playful manner in that particular situation. So I would say that there's the recognition that there is violence or a consequence to the action. It's just not as nuanced as it becomes in humans. And I think that's what you're talking about with there's no flip of a switch between sapiens and non-sapiens from that understanding.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they can understand that, someone's trying to hurt me and I need to defend myself. And, if they can go from there and say that, that means I shouldn't try to hurt anyone else because I don't like it when people try to hurt me. And you can use that to, predict the outcome. I'll bite someone who's trying to hurt me, but it's wrong for me to bite someone who isn't trying to hurt me. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
I mean, you could argue that like that's how a lot of like at least dogs act. There's a reason why dogs snap at people who do act, who well at least grab them or pet them in a way that they don't like. My corgi doesn't like people grabbing their feet. So when you grab their feet, they bite you, but they're fine anywhere else. So it's kind of that kind of basis at least points to it. And it's anecdotal, I know, but
yeah, but that goes what I was saying earlier, that I think that, that means it would be an app violation to, abuse a dog, or, hit a dog for any reason other than defense or anything like that.
No,
but, the more sophisticated the right, the more sophisticated the sapience, the understanding of your action needs to be.
I don't know. When it comes to rights, I'm usually a minimalist. It all strives from, the John Locke, life, liberty, and property sort of thing. That's me. Though I can kind of understand maybe if there's other intersections from there. Or other.
Yeah, I mean, my question would be, how do you get to life, liberty, and property? Because I get there through sapience, but it's like you talk to an objectivist and they just say, oh, well, life is the greatest value. Well, says who?
I mean, I would just argue that, we're alive right now. So in this sense, that's our natural passive state. And if someone enacts on it, it's kind of enacting an active state, at which point the burden of proof is on the actor.
Okay, but a carrot is alive right now, so is it murder to eat a carrot?
Yeah.
So every time you eat something, you commit murder?
Technically, yes. If it's alive and you intentionally kill it, is that not murder?
Well, I mean, it's only murder if they have a right to life. So where would a carrot get a right to life?
Oh, that's where I would say the rights come from. What is that? The capacity of free will. Do carrots have the ability to act?
Not that I've seen.
Saying that's kind of the argument. And like I said, I'm not the most nuanced in the sense, but like I can see your point of view at least.
Yeah. And Robert Weber asked, if something has value, then won't the free market protect that value? Well, nothing has value. Value is subjective. Something has value because someone else values it, and then how much it's valued is however much that person happens to value it.
I push buttons on a machine. The factory is mine now.
Join me, comrade.
Certainly we know that owned animals get a certain degree of protection, but should we intervene into their living conditions? I guess he means like going and clearing out woods to build a house in or something and disrupting, this ecosystem. Or
Well, at that point, it would be a question of how do we determine what is an animal's property? I mean, we kind of use it by we can we own it because we paid for it, or we made it, or something, or we homesteaded it in a sense, right? So,
right.
Does a dog peeing on a tree mean that they've homesteaded that tree?
That doesn't seem like a good basis for claim staking to me. Yeah, and Devin Rojas has asked a couple of times, does the NAP apply to animals? That's basically what we're talking about.
And we're in agreement. It's just from different starting points, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to start, from as basic as I can. I started my video with the consistency principle and the law of non-contradiction, but the first principle, the real first principles are actually much earlier than that. With the law of identity, A equals A, and if A equals A, then A does not equal not A, and things like that.
Yeah,
go through all of it. I just thought it wasn't worth going that remedial into it.
Yeah, no, I've thought about like making as like a very detailed thing, like a 2 or 3 hour just me spewing on nonsense, trying to like, I don't know. It seems like with philosophy, when you plug one hole, 2 more pop up, like Scrat and Ice Age. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's always that weird, unusual exception to everything.
And here's an interesting one from Marius Gavrila. What are your thoughts on opening up U.S. domestic routes to foreign airlines? And this goes, I think, a little more fundamental. Who owns the air, 30,000 feet up that planes can fly around in? And how do we determine who owns what routes or anything like that?
I mean, I guess it would be the same thing with borders. The routes are just kind of, they literally are imaginary lines when you think about it, because it's just a point from A to B.
But how do you determine, like, if a plane is flying along a route and another plane wants to fly along the same route at the same time? They can't fly too close to each other. So who has the best claim to that?
It would be Anarchy Shane.
I mean,
no rules.
At that point, you would just argue fly in a manner where you're not going to crash into each other. I know.
Yeah, but I mean, the point is, if there was a crash, how would you determine whose fault it was? Because under property rights theory, whoever owns, quote unquote, that route, has the right to be there, and the other person's a true. But how do you establish that? How do you figure that out? And I don't have an answer for this, by the way. This is something that smarter minds than mine are going to have to solve.
What do you think of the thing of if you own the ground below it, you also own the sky above it, in a sense?
Do you use the sky? Do you mix your labor with it? Or, I think that's what Locke said. I don't really like that as a phrase, but that's kind of the idea.
I exhale, and therefore I own all of the air.
Exactly. And I mean, where does it stop? Do you own an ever increasing wedge all the way up through infinity? So if the moon is right above your property at that time, do you own the moon?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point.
And he also asks, how would a libertarian anarcho-capitalist be able to prevent massive foreign airlines from getting massive foreign subsidies? Well, if it's anarcho-capitalist, then there aren't going to be any subsidies because there's no government to give out the subsidies.
I mean, the whole point of a subsidy is, taking money from someone else, taking money from A and giving it to B. Why would that even function there?
Yeah.
Any anarchist arguments against necrophilia? Don't.
Maybe if you're doing that, the rest of us might think that you're too kooky in the head and you might be a danger to yourself and others, and we might want to lock you up somewhere until you get your head straight.
I mean, if you want to, like, you could say, what's the anarchist argument for vaccinations? And you have people who say, well, if you're not vaccinated, you're a danger to the public, which I don't agree with, because it's like, 200 years ago, there weren't vaccinations. Was everyone a danger to the public?
Right. But I'm thinking in the sense of not understanding the nature and consequences of your actions.
Well, yeah, I guess I can get that. Like, I went to vaccinations because, like, corpses are naturally, diseased. Like, I mean, after a bit they are, but usually early on, if I recall correctly, they're quite fresh.
I don't know. I guess it would be a question of who owns the corpse, really.
I would say that it would default to the family of said corpse, but
yeah,
that's just me. But let's assume that no one owns the corpse for that one. The anarchist, I mean, there's no one saying that you can't do it. It's just
if no one owns it, then no one has the right to exclude anyone else from doing with that corpse what they want to.
Well, no, I'm agreeing with that. I was acknowledging that. My point is that, if you've had sex with a corpse and people know about it, at that point, people know about the necrophilia, just disassociate with them. That weird kid screws dead bodies. Let's not let him sit with us at the lunch table.
Yeah, well, your picture is going to be up on the grocery store saying, don't sell food to this guy and all that.
Yeah.
So we might want to do that until you decide to check yourself in somewhere and get some mental help.
Devin Rojas. Let's say a man with no family or wills, inheritance dies and his property. What happens to his property and wealth? I would imagine it's grabs for anyone. So if someone dies, no inheritance or anything like that, what happens to their property?
Yeah, I imagine just under basic property rights theory, it becomes unowned and can be claimed by the first person who can make use of it.
Or
yeah,
maybe
I would agree with that.
Or maybe have an auction it off.
Maybe
who would get the proceeds of the auction, though?
That's a good point.
I mean, like, you could say that, like, for instance, say you own a mortgage with a bank, and would it then go to the bank? Because that's kind of like the idea. If you don't have any will or inheritance,
well, like if you have a mortgage with the bank, then the bank has a lien on your property, and so yeah, they could make a claim against that lien.
Or how about this? I live in an apartment, so if I kick the bucket, would my landowner own everything I own?
Would he own the contents of your apartment, not just the apartment?
I mean, you could argue either way, I guess.
I mean, it's one of those questions like, what happens now? I mean, it's going to be a problem no matter what kind of situation you're in. Although I guess now the government would just claim that and say, "Hey, it's ours now."
Yeah.
I like that thing from Parks and Rec where Ron Swanson was talking about his will. It's just something scribbled on a piece of paper, and Ben had to tell him, if you don't have a proper will, the government's going to take most of what you own. And he's like, "Tell me about this lawyer."
Yeah, I remember that one. You just have to know how to talk to people. Let's see. I think here in the UK, this is Yorkshire MGTOW again, you're not allowed to own even a family corpse. Certainly you're not allowed to bury them in your garden. I mean, that's interesting because I know here we have family plots. There are people who do that. I don't know what kind of mother may I you have to do with the government to be able to do that, but I know it is up to the family what happens to the remains. Cyberpunk Agorist, have you needed to see Esso's latest video? Is that the one about Child Protective Services? Because, man, that is some scary stuff. Or has he put up one since then? Yeah. I mean, I always kind of knew like pieces of that were going on, but the way he put them all together, it's like, yeah. Yeah, 'cause it was stuff like of all of the children that have been taken from families and the various child protective departments, in states all over the country. And God, it was something like 18,000 of them were placed with people who were registered child sex offenders that were known to CPS to be the child sex offenders, and they placed them with them anyway.
I don't know why, but whenever the government gets involved with children, it kind of fucks it up, doesn't it?
I know, but it was stuff like, if you look at the subsidies they get from government, basically, I think what he said was when you do all the math on it, they basically end up getting $1 million for every kid they take.
Jesus.
I mean, that screws up the incentives.
See, I don't know. I kind of feel bad because, like I'm going to college to be a math teacher, which means, well, I'm a conservative leaning anarchist going to a liberal college to work for the government for the rest of my life.
You must be having so much fun.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you can always work at a private school.
Yeah, I've thought about that. I figure that if I have the right capitalistic work ethic, I'll become teacher of the year, get up on stage and just say, I'm terrible at my job and I'm the best. That says something.
Yeah, there was that one teacher of the year who, I forget his name, but I think Stossel covered him. But yeah, he was saying stuff like that. He's like, yeah, I'm teacher of the year and I basically suck at this. We all suck at our jobs. We're all overpaid.
Well, like with my first education class was basically, hey, we're going to treat every student like they're a special needs student. And then on top of that, it's, if they don't understand it, why don't you dumb it down even further and treat these people who are 14, 15 years old like they're 8? And it's...
Yeah.
I don't know. Schooling system I don't like, and
but I mean that's how you get the grades up, because that's what it's all about. Hey, the kids are making higher grades. That means they're doing better. Well, no, it really doesn't.
Well, I'm a math ed major with an econ minor, so I also intend to teach a little bit of econ on the side. And what's interesting is when I was going through high school, I kind of realized this partway through. It's like, oh, I'm being a teacher for the 2 classes that I found the teachers I had to be the worst. So I think I'm just replacing them. Free market at work. Because
but it's been what, like 7 or 8 years, I think, since Common Core, enough for kids to have gone through all of high school with Common Core and gone on to college. And what they're finding with in colleges is the kids that are graduating with all these, wonderful grades under the Common Core curriculum, they need like the most remedial stuff to
I believe
to be able to get caught up.
See, and like I would argue that I didn't even get Common Core because my one of my math teachers, what he would do is he would give us the test, leave the answers out on his desk, and then leave the room.
I've heard of that happening, yeah.
I don't know. The schooling systems, I always find just to be so messed up, because every step of the way, it's just, you're setting the teachers up for failure, and furthermore, setting the kids up for failure. Because, after high school, they say, you got to go to college, you got to go to college, you got to go to college. And I'm genuinely scared about that, because all that does is it incentivizes people just to go massively into... I'm going massively into debt for it. And, oof, it's bad.
Oh, it was bad enough when I went to college. I graduated, I think, with it's like 30, 40,000 in debt. And I mean, man, that was enough of an albatross as it was. There are people graduating college from state colleges, state-supported colleges, with close to like $200,000 in student loans?
I think when I get out, I'm going to be $30,000 to $40,000 myself.
Okay, yeah, that's
So
about what I was.
because though luckily I think because I'm doing the teaching stuff and I don't like it because principles, but at the same time necessity. I'll be able to basically after 8 years, if I spend 4 years teaching in a low income area, I'll be able to get that written off, which is
Okay.
nice. But yeah.
Yeah.
Rojas says again, "Hey Shane, as a libertarian, is it okay if I join the military? I've always wanted to do it since I was about 5. I don't have anything else to do after high school."
Oh, I mean, I'm sure you could find all sorts of stuff. You do find something you're interested in and start a business on it. But as far as joining the military is concerned, I mean, it's the country we live in. We live in the state, so you're going to have to drive on the roads, that sort of thing. So, I mean, it's okay with me if you join the military, but I mean, you really ought to think about the kind of stuff that it does for you that they really don't prepare you for. Like, look at how many veterans commit suicide, even if they haven't seen combat.
I could see it.
I mean, so apparently it's. I mean, and I've heard stories too where but basically basic training is psychological torture and indoctrination is basically what it is. And apparently it only gets worse from there.
I could see. I mean, I bet it's over exaggerated, but what is it? Full Metal Jacket. The snot nosed communist, whatever. It's a famous movie. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, Stanley Kubrick directed it.
Yeah. I imagine that's exaggerated, but I could also see it being fairly accurate. But to answer Rojas's question, I'm as libertarian as you can get, and I'm planning on working for the government for the rest of my life. So my take is, do what you want, but keep your principles. Like, don't let your principles get in the way of what you want to do.
Yeah, don't let them change who you are. Wouldn't mind fighting a country like Venezuela. Is there any need to? They're destroying themselves.
I mean, it's literally just sit there and watch, like, grab a bag of popcorn. Our bravest soldiers, they had to fight without butter.
You want to defend Venezuela from the enemy, then join the people who are trying to get Dash established there and get people to use cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
That is the biggest thing you can do against the state of Venezuela, I think. And also help like people in Colombia, because there are a lot of Venezuelan expats in Colombia, and to get them established on it, then it's real easy for them to send remittances back home.
You said you like Dash over Bitcoin, right? I was wondering like why that is. Why you think Dash is better?
Oh, let's see. Incredibly low transaction fees, instant transactions. They're just about to advocate the Activate version 14, which will allow you to do chained instant transactions, because right now you can do an instant transaction and give someone money, but they'd have to wait for a confirmation before they get it on. Well, after this latest version Activate, then they'll be able to just go ahead and do it. And I mean, it's all because of this masternode system that they've set up that's doing so amazing things. After this, they say it's going to be version 1.0, which they're calling evolution. And it's going to be stuff like, instead of having to send money to this big, long, crazy, public key thing, you just send it to a username. And just all this amazing stuff that they're doing on network that all of the other cryptos are struggling to build up all of these support systems to do. And I mean,
do you buy Dash, and where do you get it?
I don't think I've ever actually bought any Dash. I've received like other cryptocurrencies and exchanged them for Dash, but I don't think I've bought any trade. But there's a list of exchanges on dash.org.
I was just wondering if you had one you'd recommend personally.
Yeah, not really. I think the only exchange I've ever actually bought from is Coinbase, and that was like back in the day when it was just Bitcoin. And I think, let's see. Okay, I cashed out of Coinbase. First of all, because it was an exchange and I wanted to get it in a wallet that I controlled, but also because we were getting up towards the Bitcoin Cash fork, and I wanted to be sure that I had hold of the keys so I could claim it. Turned out eventually you were able to claim it with Coinbase, so it would have been fine, but I just wanted to make sure of that. But my God, pulling that Bitcoin down. Well, first of all, I transferred it and I waited like a week and it didn't work and it failed and the money reappeared in the original wallet. So I was like, okay, try it again. Then I tried it again, and this time I think it took like 5 or 6 days. And I mean, I've even heard of people here. I mean, it's better now, but I've still heard of people having to wait like a day or two and still having to spend like $3 or $4 just in transaction costs.
Wow.
Yeah, so there've really been a lot of steps. Bitcoin Cash is a lot better. But as many innovations as they've been doing with Bitcoin Cash, they've kind of been lagging behind Dash on that.
I don't know much about Bitcoin Cash at all. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, it's basically Bitcoin, except that the people who run it actually understand that, yeah, you need a bigger block size if you're going to handle more, transactions. And so they're just focusing on making a network that runs well and again, faster they do have instant transactions, but it's zero confirmation, so there's not really any security there. And like I was saying earlier, the person who receives it cannot then go around and immediately spend it. You have to wait for confirmations on the network to do that. So but they're also like really low transaction fees, things like that. But I just see them as lagging behind Dash because they have to figure out how to do it without masternodes.
Doesn't the original Bitcoin wallet take up like 30 gigabytes now?
Probably to download the entire blockchain. I mean, that actually sounds like it's lowballing it, but I don't know what it is right now. But it's getting big, yeah.
I'm old-fashioned, so I have gold.
I have some gold and silver.
I have actually a pretty hefty chunk of copper somewhere. I should find that again. My father was a Youper, so you walk around and you find like 10-pound chunks of copper or something like that. Probably closer to like 5 pounds.
Wow.
Cyberpunk Agorist, how long do you think the dollar will last before it collapses?
I can't predict anything about timing. I don't think anyone can, but I can pretty much predict how it will collapse. Because you're starting to see, oh God, what countries? There were like a few countries, I forget which ones, I don't think they were in the Middle East, but anyway, they were saying, yeah, let's not do anything in common with dollars. Let's have a common currency other than dollars. I think you're starting to see more and more of that. And it's like this other country was going to like cash out all of its dollar reserves and go into gold. If they do that, and that causes the inflation rate to go up, then others might do the same and say, I'll cash out our dollars to get gold, which will make you go up a little more, which will make more of them want to do it, which will make more of them want to do it. And it gets a feedback loop. And then eventually you're going to have this runaway effect and hyperinflation. And I don't think that's a question of if, I think it's a question of when.
See, my theory is that the U.S. will go into civil war in the next decade. 2020s, there's going to be civil war. That's my prediction.
What are the two sides, are you thinking?
Well, it's going to basically be the establishment versus, I don't want to say conservatives and libertarians, more, I don't know. It's definitely going to be involving Trump.
I don't. Usually when you have a civil war, it's collectivist authoritarians versus other collectivist authoritarians.
Yeah. Oh,
But I mean, it's like, I mean, I think really the things instead of a civil war is doing the disruptive things like I've been talking about, using cryptocurrency, use the new BitTubers social media site when it comes out, and break everyone away from YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, and just start doing these alternatives. Do more business in cryptocurrency. Find other alternatives to things the state is doing.
actually, I'm surprised because I know that there's multi-streaming programs. I'm surprised you haven't um, taken this onto DLive, because that way
Yeah,
I mean,
I-
it's pretty. Sorry.
I'm not really liking the looks of DLive either. Everything I'm looking at, it says that this isn't really the decentralized solution we want. It seems like, yeah, technically it's a cryptocurrency, but it's one like no one's heard of and no one can figure out how to get into and stuff like that. So I think it's kind of like Steam. It's basically controlled by the devs, and they're using it as a coin faucet for themselves.
I could see it. Because I just did a live stream earlier with my mate Arcater, and we did it mainly on DLive.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I want it's not that I never wanted DLive or Gab or Minds or any of those to be good. I mean, I'd be fine if all of those were awesome solutions. It's just that I don't think they are, and the reason why I'm focusing so much on BitTube, and particularly the upcoming social media site they have, is I really think they're the ones that are doing it right.
well, like right now, people are just very terrified of Google and Facebook and YouTube and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
it's a shotgun sort of method. They're throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. And DLive right now is the biggest alternative to Twitch, especially because PewDiePie was decided to move over there.
Yeah, I think that's really the only reason anyone knows about it, to be honest. But I mean, that's the sort of thing that that kind of makes me worried, because the BitTube people and the Dash people as well. This is another reason I like Dash. The devs have always said, even when they were in that big, bull year, and Dash got over like $1,000, it was like, I think it was like 1,600 at it, maybe even more, per Dash when it was going. The devs were still saying, let's just focus on slow, steady growth. And it's like everyone else is trying to jump on a bandwagon and grab things here and now, and it's like they're not really committed to a long-term future. That's what I'm seeing with Dash and BitTube that I'm not seeing with a lot of these other projects. I'm not seeing it with DLive. I'm not seeing it with Steam. Maybe Gab I think might be, but like I said, I'm going to take a second look at it once they get the ability to upload videos. But
I'm kind of thinking like maybe the best way, if we start, if a new social media is to start up, maybe do it kind of through the establishment, like say what is it, like one of those shows, or you go through something that's fairly popular, you make kind of a side thing to it, and then say, oh hey, this is a new platform that we're making. It's based on dialogue or whatever, and it's designed to be more free speech and stuff like that. And that's kind of the I don't know, that's the avenue I think it's going to go from, and that's why
that's the idea of BitTube. That was the idea of the original BitTube site, which is now sadly defunct, but for a lot of reasons I won't go into. But I mean, that's why they've been focusing on this new site and getting it going. If some government says, hey, this is copyrighted, or this is hate speech or something like that, and you need to take it down, all they can really do is delist it from their site. But if you have the link to it, it's decentralized, so you can always get the original content, just from whoever's seeding it, because it'll run over WebTorrent. But you'll always be able to get the even if they take it off the site, it's not like it'll be gone. That's what like a lot of people are afraid about with YouTube. Hey, I've got all these YouTube videos up over the years, but if they delete your channel, then those videos are gone. And what are you going to do about it? Well, at least this way, at least if you've saved the links, you've still got all the material that you've created.
I mean, yeah, that's basically what's been happening with Suit Yourself, because for like the last 2 years, he's just been false flag after false flag, and his channel's been deleted dozens of times, I think. Maybe I'm exaggerating, I don't know. It's been a while since I've...
he's had a lot of issues, I know, and Dapperton's got deleted that one time, the channel he has with over 120,000 subscribers or something like that.
Yeah.
And he got it back, but man, can you imagine having 120,000 subscribers and then having to start from scratch?
Have you been demonetized, Shane?
My channel has not been demonetized. I have had to wrestle more and more and more with monetization on individual videos. I don't think I've had a quickie to be monetized in like these last 2 sets that I've done.
There was a video by some black guy who he basically talked about how basically the algorithm screws him over this time of the year. Maybe that's happening to you.
I don't know. It just seems like everything I upload now, it automatically goes on limited monetization. And I usually upload a couple of days ahead of time, so hopefully I can get it, but that hasn't been happening lately. It's been taking like, several hours after it goes live before they'll finally get around to monetizing it. Or, like I said, in the case of the quickies, they'll say, no, confirmed by manual review. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with this video? What could anyone possibly have? I mean, this is something else about BitTube, because I mean, they're going to have to do things like that. They're going to have to take down copyrighted material. They're going to have to deal, with the things like the hate speech laws and everything else in various countries. But they're wanting to have it where the moderation system is community driven and completely transparent. And you have, not only the ability to appeal, but to know who you're dealing with, and what their reputation is on the system and things like that.
See, and I think YouTube tried to do that, and that was YouTube Heroes.
Well, but no, there was no transparency at all. You have no idea who it is that's reviewing your videos. You have no way of contacting them and asking you what they have. They have that terms and conditions document, and then they have that other explainer document that goes into it, and everything is just so vague. You have no idea what it could be, and so you ask them for clarification. Every time I've asked them for clarification, the only thing they've ever done is sent me and say, read this link, and it's the exact same link that didn't explain it to begin with.
I mean, that's basically what the Voxite Apocalypse is about right now.
Oh, hey, I made it.
Hey, Daniel. We're talking about how sucky YouTube is while we're on YouTube, so apparently we still have the freedom to do that at least.
One second, I was gonna try something.
Some woke hipster of one facet or another is gonna come around and say how much of a hypocrite we are.
Maybe. Randall McMurphy, I can only see an ANCAP US benefit other countries. If other countries are putting massive subsidies into their corporations, it misdirects resources that are vital in other sectors of their economy. Well, I don't see why that would be the ANCAP US benefiting other countries. It's other countries shooting themselves in the foot. Because like you said, they're misdirecting resources, and that wouldn't be happening in ANCAP US.
ANCAP US is a contradiction. Changed my mind.
Well, it's true, because the S stands for states, and there wouldn't be any state.
There'd be a state of being stateless.
Causing a bubble that eventually pops, and ANCAP economy would be more stable and sustainable. I don't know. I don't see where you're going with that, Randall.
I don't know.
Marius asks, what happens if other nations do not become ANCAP and still have government? Well, Like I said, that's them shooting themselves in the foot.
We could be a shining example of what to do right.
Well, and that's the kind of thing, even without going full ANCAP, if you just look at things like the trade war, it's like, well, why do we have to put, all these tariffs against, goods from this other country and make things more expensive for ourselves? Well, because they're putting tariffs on our goods. Like, well, let them. They're only shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
They're not harming us by doing that.
The simplest solution is to not. Hmm.
Oh, okay. He was answering a question from higher up. I think they scrolled off the top, and
Is there any big, any new news on Julian Assange?
Last I've heard, I think he's still going through the courts in the UK, but the US has officially charged him under the Espionage Act, which basically means he's not going to get a fair trial.
Surprise.
I don't see how anyone can for 1 minute think that's constitutional.
Well, the British don't have a constitution, if I recall correctly.
No, I'm talking about the Espionage Act in the US.
Oh, okay.
That's ridiculous, Shane. You know the Constitution is an outdated 200-year-old document.
Yeah, except for the parts we like.
Yeah.
McMurphy has asked this once or twice now. Any thoughts on Yang's Freedom Divided?
Freedom dividend, he says, and I'm not familiar with that.
I'm
illiterate. You know what that is?
From my understanding, Yang is an accelerationist, so that's all I know.
I wonder if it's something like, his version of UBI or something.
A really bad way of giving many people, so it's giving people back their tax money while also putting the country deeper into debt. That's what he says, at least.
Well, why not just not tax them to begin with?
It does seem kind of backwards in the first place.
Anyone 18 plus $1,000 a month. Yeah, that sounds like UBI.
I mean, I'll take it, but
yeah. Because they're just, if you refuse it, it's not like it's going to go back to the taxpayers. They're just going to use it on something else.
Yeah. But wait, no, it's going to the taxpayers through that thing that's usually 20 to 30 times more expensive than what it should be.
Yeah.
The people I stream with, they're not ANCAPs, though. I think I'm slowly turning them because basically we had a discussion about private police, and it basically, I got them to admit that private police are just as good, if not better, in every way. It's just that, it's voluntary versus forced, so it's less secure in a sense. Like, you're not guaranteed it, but then I also explained, yeah, but at least they protect you.
Yeah. And Randall says he's convincing, I take it he's still talking about Yang. He's convincing a lot of people through Luddism. So I guess he's like saying that, the technology is going to steal your job. And so we have to give you
$1,000. Gerbs.
Yeah.
Haven't the courts also
yeah, I've seen that.
Response to Froman? Haven't the courts...
I work at a pizza place, and we just got a dough roller, and everyone's afraid of it because it's scary technology.
Oh, boy.
It's like, it makes us do our job faster. It doesn't actually remove anyone from the workplace. It just makes us do our job faster.
This is my contention. John Henry was an idiot because, yeah, he just barely beat the machine, but he died in the process. If he wasn't an idiot, he would say, wait a minute, you mean I could have done this exact same job, but all I would have had to have done is sit in a chair and push some levers back and forth? Yeah, sign me up for that.
Oh, but you need to kill yourself. It builds character.
Yeah.
And people say capitalists are the ones overworking people.
I've always wondered how much of that was actual history and how much of it was kind of exaggerated after the fact.
I always just thought John Henry was mostly legends.
No, apparently it actually happened or something like it. But like I say, I don't know how much of it is history and how much of it is just, exaggerations after the fact, turning it into a legend.
No, I got, what was I about to think? I lose my thought before I even start it.
The trucking industry is being changed by AI. Are you talking about driverless trucks there? I mean, people just have to remember when cars came out, the people who made buggy whips and ran livery stables and things like that lost their jobs. But do you really think this country would be better off if we were still all in horse and buggies?
I mean, we'd be less
The
efficient.
argument I've heard is that it's replacing the jobs that are being replaced aren't necessarily things we've come up with, but humans themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, according to environmental hysteria.
Well, the AI isn't replacing a human in itself because there's still people who need to organize and figure that stuff out. It's just getting from A to B. And if you need a person to get something from A to B, I mean, log chutes. Does that remove human work? Now people don't have. It went from people carrying logs to just sending it down a slide, essentially.
And now I'm just imagining
Made the logging industry a lot better.
Now I'm imagining a bunch of stormcloaks, like, they're taking our jobs!
It does the same job, in a sense, but it doesn't get rid of human work. It just moves it around. I mean, it's going from unskilled labor, driving...
Well, it's not just moving it around, it's enabling it to do more, because imagine if 90% of us still had to be farmers and we couldn't be, making computers or, developing software or whatever. Has anyone ever recognized you in public, Shane? Only if I've been somewhere, like I got recognized at the Amazing Meeting. I got recognized at Nullify Now, but not just like on the streets around where I live or anything like that.
Yeah, I kind of butchered what I was trying to say, but I'll have to go back and watch this video. I saw this video and how this time automation is different because it's replacing. I'd probably ask Shane about it in an upcoming AMA to take a look at the video and tell me where it's wrong.
Robert Weber. I would replace politicians with AI. AI would be way overqualified for that job, Robert.
It's always different this time.
I've thought about. Well, I've told you, Shane, I want to run for president when I turn 36, and just like I'm going to make Vermin Supreme look like a normie.
Sounds good. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, I think it was Richard Wolf I did this video about, and he was complaining about automation is taking the jobs away from McDonald's cashiers, because you won't need a cashier, you'll just walk up to a touchscreen. I was pointing out, he does realize that the job of cashier only exists because of technology when the cash register was invented in the 19th century, because before then, the owner or a partner or someone like that had to handle all the money. And then the cash register meant that an employee could do it.
But we can't look at history.
Yeah.
History's never helped anyone.
Oh, there goes Daniel.
That's actually kind of a scary thought. History hasn't helped anyone because you always have to look back for it.
What was that saying? History makes you take the test and then teaches you the lesson.
Yeah.
Tucker Carlson is one of the regular drivers of vehicles. Yeah, I did that one. There's a Lord Killian video about that.
That was the one with Ben Shapiro. It was him interviewing. Oh no, Ben Shapiro interviewing him, wasn't it?
I forget who was interviewing who, but yeah, I think it was both of them. And it was like, what? Why would, what? Do you not understand anything at all about history or economics? Yeah,
Well,
I'm working on another video about Tucker Carlson.
See, I tend to like people not for how intelligent they are, but for their memeability.
Yeah.
The video is called "Humans Need Not Apply." If you all want to check it out.
Yeah, search for it on my channel because Lord Killian ripped into him.
I know what's wrong.
It's interesting. From the start, I've always thought of Lord Killian as a separate character. I had Tabby do the avatar version of me just for my regular videos, so I could have something visual on the screen without recording myself with my camera. And I've started to think of that version of me as a different character, and I have no idea what to call him. It's weird how these things go.
Yeah, I remember when I pointed out a bit of a plot hole in your recent crossover video.
Oh no,
we know about each other. Yeah, so it's
if you make but if you make that a separate character, that could resolve the plot hole.
Fellows,
that's true. I can just make it another alter ego, and the alter egos are aware of each other.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just do whatever occurs to me. Don't look for like story arcs or consistency or anything like that. I'm just going to do whatever seems funny at the time.
Makes sense.
I mean, that's the only real way to do it. What was I going to say? The character from, what is it?
Also, am I the only one who thinks that the Livertoons cast should form an a cappella group and call themselves the Dappertones?
I've heard some of those guys try to sing. You don't want that.
Oh god, the participants are not actors.
Which will be obvious in about 5 seconds. Will we have to worry about AI becoming something like Skynet or Shodan? I've generally been kind of skeptical of that, but I think at least Yudkowsky is gradually changing my mind on that. Because the thing that's really disturbed me is he's saying, okay, all of the things, all of the Asimovs, all of the other things you can do to limit AI, to stop it from taking over the world. You can think of it like putting it in a box. And he says, I will challenge. And I don't know if this is open to anyone or just other people working in the AI field or what. I know Alex Fauble, Fourth Root, tried to challenge him on it. He hasn't taken him up yet. But the idea is, and there's all sorts of things like it. You have like 2 hours or something like that, and it takes place over a chat room, and there's some other limitations on it, but basically he gets 2 hours role-playing the AI to convince you to let him out of the box, and it has to be like your own free will. He can't like threaten to kill your family or anything like that to let him out of the box. And just 2 hours, he says, I can get anyone to let me out of the box. And there have been a couple of us who've publicly taken it up on it. It's like, yeah, no way am I going to let him out of the box. Let's do this. And then 2 hours later, the guy tweets, I let him out of the box.
Couldn't AI also evolve to protect humans?
What I was wondering is if you could set up something where there were 2 AIs and they each had to keep the other in check, and you had some way of making it a contradiction so that they couldn't agree, like to let the other one out, essentially letting them out or something like that, and just trap them in like this box of logic. that they can never escape
so
from.
they're technically looping with each other.
Basically, yeah. Yeah, like in order for one AI to be let out of the box, the other AI would have to get out of the box, but then the first AI would have to let him out of the box, but he couldn't get out of the box to let him out of the box or something like that.
I mean, I'm sure you could set up at least like I'm imagining just like not a complex AI, just like a monkey in a box sort of idea. And
I'm still not really thinking that's the direction we're going to go. The AI that we're building for like practical purposes is very specialized. It's not the general sort of AI that you'd have to worry about. I think what's more likely to happen is there'll be more of an Arthur C. Clarke style merger between the humans and the machines. So it won't ever be like us versus the AI. We will become the AI.
That's what I've always thought. If you
that's
can't,
kind of what Musk is working on right now, isn't it? Where he's basically trying to make cybernetic implants into our brains to make it so that we can download information directly into our noggins to the point where we rival AI.
I thought he was just doing like like the first step of that would be for like someone who has someone's like paralyzed and has no use of their arms and their legs and can't speak or anything like that, but they would be able to, and they've had like incredibly rudimentary versions of this for years, but where they'd be like able to move a pointer around a screen or something like that, and then go from there into actually using that interface and the AI to replace whatever parts of their body are failing.
Yeah, I could see it.
I mean, there's some weird stuff. Like they were working on an artificial limb that you don't have to do any funky things to use. You would just think about using it just like you would your normal arm. And so they were going to test it on themselves, but of course they had two arms, and so they hooked it up, and they were wondering, like, what's it going to do? Is it going to, like, if it's an artificial right arm, is it going to mimic my right arm and be a copycat? Turns out the brain wires up a whole new motor section for it, and you can manipulate it completely independently of your other two arms. So you actually could be Doc Ock.
I mean, doesn't the subconscious...
I have a fairly rudimentary understanding of psychology, but that checks out from what I know.
This is more neurology than psychology. Doesn't the subconscious take care of most of that tedious stuff?
Well, a lot of it is autonomic. I don't think it's even subconscious. It's just completely unconscious. There was like, oh God, this was years ago, and I don't remember where I saw it. There was a woman who had lost her sense of balance. So, I mean, her arms and legs worked fine, but just because she couldn't balance, she had to be like strapped into a wheelchair because she was like slumped over. And so they said, okay, let's make this helmet for her. And I'm trying to think of how they rigged it up, but they had all these switches that could like give her feedback as to the orientation of her head and just see, yes, if we can get her to start sitting up. And yes, they did that. And eventually she was able to sit up and then stand up and was eventually able to walk. And the weird thing was that they found out that even when she wasn't wearing the helmet, the effects still kind of lingered. And as they went on with that, she needed the helmet less and less, to where she needed it like once a day, then once every few days, then once a week, and ended up not needing it at all because her brain had wired up a whole new balance center for her.
You know, it's moments like that just make me happy to be alive.
Yeah, it's just amazing stuff.
Yeah, fill you with wonder.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a while before we can take care of certain things like Alzheimer's, but if you think about ALS, where the problem is you're just gradually losing motor function, if you could replace that with cybernetics, then, because from what I understand, the reason why ALS kills you is not because of the ALS itself or whatever causes it, but it gets to the point where you're not able to move your lungs and keep breathing, sort of thing. You know, it just shuts down all of your motor functions over a period of a couple of years.
Eventually,
So, but if you,
eventually, we may just create a whole new container for our brain.
maybe be like Cybermen.
Delete.
Delete. Damn it.
Yeah, hopefully we won't go too far down that road. Let's keep our emotions and our empathy, but
Kind of something interesting,
I actually
similar
wouldn't
to
mind.
our topic, and I've been asked this a few times before, so I'll let you guys give your take. Let's say I create an android over time, and it learns about self-ownership. Does the android have the right to run away, even though it's not human and I created it?
yeah,
Yes.
I mean, you can. I mean, I've already done this. I've built a completely logical basis for self-ownership. So yeah, it should be fairly easy to teach an android about it. And if the android is capable of doing that, and as I've said a few times before in this live stream, capable of appreciating the nature and consequences of its own actions, then yeah, I mean, I would say it has a right to its autonomy, because I think at that point you actually have a sapient android.
I have heard that Google
And
is.
I mean,
I have heard that
at
Google.
that point, I mean, you could say that it's. I'm not sure if it doesn't have enough information to determine whether or not it's has free will or not, but because it learns about self-ownership, I would say yeah, it does have free will to some degree at least.
Well,
So,
how can it run away if it doesn't have free will?
I mean, you
yeah.
could make a program for it to run away, but you know,
Well, I think the implication is that hasn't happened, and it's got its idea on its own to run away.
yeah, that's the point that I'm saying. Like, my point was there's not enough information, so I'm going to assume such.
Yeah, I have heard.
But yeah, I would say because it has free will from both our perspectives.
What are you
Same
trying to say,
conclusion.
Daniel?
I've heard that Google is working on building androids.
Oh, they've had Android out for a while now. It's Pi now, I guess. We'll have to see soon what Q is. Everyone's kind of curious about that. What are they going to call Android Q?
Q. That would be Android 9.
I forget the version, but yeah, everyone seems to go immediately to quiche. But then after that, when they think about what else they could be, they just go in bizarre directions.
Couldn't they give quiche a chance?
Well, the thing is quiche technically a dessert? You know, I don't know. We'll have to see what they come up with. Oh yeah, Westworld is really good. Heather and I both love that show. A couple of references I don't get. Near Automata.
Oh, Nier Automata is a JRPG series that kind of spun off from the Drakengard games.
See, I just don't have time to play games. It's just what it is.
I do recommend the Persona series and the Trails series if you want JRPGs. But if you're interested in something that doesn't require a lot of motion or intricate mechanics, I recommend a visual novel like Ace Attorney or Zero Escape. Mostly puzzle solving.
I want K9. That's what I want.
What, the doctor's dog?
Yeah, who wouldn't want a robot dog? Come on.
True.
And he's also kind of a badass. I mean, look at how many bad guys he took out.
We are in a car.
Oh, we were in a car. Yeah.
Oh, poor Mickey.
Yeah. He came all right in the end. I like how people say things like it's a follow-up to Near Gestalt, which is based off of Bad Indian and Drakengard, as if I'm going to understand those references either.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind a battle droid. What if the battle bots achieve sapience and start taking over? That's when I'd want some Stinger missiles on my hands.
I wouldn't mind an Orbman.
Or if they make an automated killdozer. I'm telling you something. I wouldn't mind seeing the plans for that thing. I have no idea how he did that.
Well, Dankula explained it semi-decently. Basically, it was like a sheet of metal, a layer of concrete, and then another sheet of metal. That was my understanding of it, at least, over a bulldozer.
Yeah.
Its own little tank.
Well, and he had it was all one thing, so he had to set up cameras around it so he could see because there was no weak spot on it.
Well, yeah, even then, he put fans on the cameras so that it would blow dust and debris off of it too, because he planned that much ahead. He was playing the long game.
Oh yeah. My vision is not impaired.
I can do a better Dalek.
Was that when
You cannot do a better Dalek. I have a lower voice, therefore I am the supreme Dalek.
Fine.
Your voice is better for it. I think mine's a little too buttery.
Yeah.
I can do a pretty good Mario though.
Hey, for a minute, matches your body.
What?
He said his voice was buttery, and I'm just saying it matches his body.
Okay.
Sorry, that was a poor attempt at a fat joke.
Is there something going on between you two that I don't know about?
Oh, tell
I
me.
actually can't hear him through the hangout. I don't know why. I don't know. It's weird. I can hear him through the stream, just not the hangout.
Weird.
That is weird. Wars with battle droids would be cool, and they're not sentient. Yeah, if you want to have a war, okay, we're going to the battle box. We're going to see who's the better driver.
I'm wondering how long it's going to be for the first real massive cyber war.
Some people say it's already happening. I mean, when you look at all of the things countries are doing, the U.S., Russia, Kazakhstan, everyone, they're all doing or hiring people to do to each other just as a matter of course. Not even as like a war, just as like a normal peacetime activity.
Oh, God.
The cyber attacks and cyber espionage.
I'm pretty sure you guys know James Leroy Wilson, right?
I've heard the name. You might have to remind me where I've heard it.
I don't know where you might have heard it. I remember you commenting on some of his stuff. But I just found this post from him on Facebook, and it has to be seen to be believed.
What does he say?
I love the Bible because it's true, not because it's factual.
Okay. That's Ocasio-Cortez level dumb right there.
Yeah.
What was his name again?
James Leroy Wilson.
Wasn't he like one of the first idiots I did on the podcast or something like that? Someone search the podcast archive.
I'm pretty sure he's a mutual of ours. Yeah, he's a friend of you, me, Jim, and Perry.
Oh, he is?
Yeah, and Don Tuatha.
Oh, then it's not the guy I'm thinking of. Who is he then? I know the name. I definitely know the name.
Hold on, I'll link you.
All right, Devin Rojas. I was having a discussion with my friends about. By the way, I make no promises that I'm going to come close to pronouncing your names correctly. I was having a discussion with my friends about copying. So let's say I write a story and someone copies it word for word and sells it. Is it okay? I would say it's totally okay. I would say it depends on whether or not they claim that they're the ones that wrote it.
Yeah, if they
They
claim
can
they're the
sell it,
ones,
but they can't claim authorship when you're the author.
yeah, if they claim authorship, that's
I mean, at
technically
that point,
fraud.
it's not a copyright issue; it's a fraud issue.
Right. I mean, if I just copied down, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone and published it under my name saying that I wrote it, not J.K. Rowling, I mean, everyone would know in that example, but to just say I could get away with it, I will be committing fraud because she didn't write it. Or if I wrote a new Harry Potter book and pretended it was written by her, then, that would be fraud. But if I wrote a new Harry Potter book and put my own name to it and said this just takes place in the Potterverse, I don't see any problem with that whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then people who complain about how the new sequel of whatever movie they love sucks so much they can make their own, and maybe people like that.
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to intellectual property, I don't know. I like Denny Champ's video when it comes to it because he's just, I mean, he's like he's like my number 2 or number 3 favorite YouTuber. But essentially, his argument, he goes through the history of copyright and kind of why it exists from that basis, and then he kind of then explains, well, here's why it's wrong, that kind of thing, and it's just fantastic. But
that's cool. Send me the link. I'll put it in the show notes. But I always like the one on Copy Me that just goes through it, through the Statute of Anne and all that. The way where you just like the way they present it, they don't even have to explain to you why it's wrong. It's just obvious.
I'll send it to you via Discord.
Okay. That's probably the easiest thing to do, and then I can just go into Discord afterwards, grab all the links, and put them in the info.
Yeah, I sent you that guy's page. That guy's
no, but like he basically like he starts with copyright back in like Mesopotamian times, I think, where they had a rule where it was whoever makes an invention gets to use it for, it was either 1 year or 10 years. I don't think that's really important, but he gets to use that exclusively for 1 year before anyone else is allowed to.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't realize it went quite that far back. I knew ancient Rome had something like that. I'm not exactly sure how it worked.
It goes before Rome, I know that, but it goes way back.
Does a parent have an obligation to take care of their child, or that if they choose not to, they must give it to someone else? If that is not possible, can they just allow it to die? So if you bring a person into that world, that person didn't ask you to do that. That is your action. And as it is your action, you are responsible for the consequences.
Yeah, so essentially the act of bringing a child into the world is fundamentally making a contract.
Well, I don't know if I would say a contract, because there's no meeting of the minds, because the baby doesn't have a mind, but there is an obligation. The way a trustee would have an obligation to a piece of property, you have an obligation to the child to either care for it or go through the process of turning that over to someone else.
Huh. When is the mind developed?
Like I said, I don't think it's a switch that's turned on and off. I think it just kind of develops different abilities slowly over time. Because like if you talk to magicians, they'll tell you, like, if they're doing birthday parties and they're doing birthday parties for 13-year-olds, you have to do completely different tricks than you do for 5-year-olds, because so many tricks are about, exploiting your assumptions and your cognitive biases and stuff like that, things that are common to all of our brains, but they don't work on 5-year-olds because they haven't developed that part of their brains yet. So they have to do tricks where like, oh, look, a rabbit, and go, oh, a cute animal, and things like that. But they can't do like the more sophisticated tricks like, making something disappear and reappear somewhere else, because their minds don't make the same kind of assumptions for them to be fooled by it.
That's why the whole hiding your face behind your hand thing amuses is so entertaining with babies.
Yeah, it's like you're disappearing and reappearing. Ludbard Mingbover. How you doing, Ludbard?
Good. Okay.
You said in the chat you're Pakna Sesam, so I might just call you Pakna because it's easier to pronounce.
Doesn't really matter.
Pakna, how you been?
All right. I would have come earlier, but I was pretty busy with some stuff.
I thought of this thing that I thought you'd get a kick out of. I might DM you about it later.
All right. So, I guess one thing I might want to bring up is how would you deal with very unclear abandonment? Because I think it's clear that if you gift property to someone or you sell it, you're clearly giving up all of your property rights. But let's say you build a house and then you leave it for 10, 20, 30, so the house is starting to fall apart. I mean, at what point, let's just say you don't put a sign that says abandoned or it's in work. So would a squatter have a right to be able to start building on, take advantage of the property?
Yeah, I think if it's like, falling apart, tree growing up through the middle of the living room, I think it's pretty clear by that point that you're not coming back because you haven't done anything to maintain it and it's no longer useful for the purpose for which you build it. But I don't really know of a good place to nice and objectively draw the line, because you don't want to like go on a trip around the world for a year, come back and they say, oh, well, we thought you abandoned your property, so we live here now.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's obvious that if you step outside your house for a second, you don't lose the property immediately. I think you would have to basically be based on like decay or how. I mean, if it's severely decayed, as you mentioned, then I think my view might be more,
if you've made sure the property is maintained, that's something active. That's because I think property, because Locke always talked about, property has your labor mixed into it and stuff like that. I really think what property is about is the intention to use it in the future. Because if I have something in my possession, I'm using it right now and it's an extension of me kind of because I'm directly connected to it. If I set it down, but I have an intention of using it later, then that's what property is all about. If I don't have any intention of using it later, then, what would it mean for it to be my property? So if I like toss something in the trash can, then that signifies that I have no intent of using it later and someone can go trash digging and pull it out.
I think I would say that I think I would actually say that if you abandon a piece of property for, I don't know, decades, but then if you registered it with like a land claim association and it was clear that it was going to say this property is going to be in future use, I don't think at that point any squatter could have a right to it, because you clearly have made your intent that you're going to return to it at some point. It could be maybe never, but it could also be like 20 years. So I don't really think you lose your property, after a certain amount of time necessarily.
Yeah, I don't know if you can really put a time limit on it. I mean, I don't know. I can't really boil that line where it's drawn down to first principles, because, like I said, property is about a claim to future exclusive use. If you're not going to use it again in the future, then effectively it's unowned and someone can claim it. But how do you make that determination? How you doing, Rika?
Hey, Rika, you made it.
Yeah. I think it's really more.
All right, we can't hear Rika right now, but Minka, I don't know, no idea if I'm pronouncing that right. That right says, any plans for more debates? You basically have to ask Dapperton about that. He hasn't said anything to me about it.
Yeah, I think the issue is really more of a. I think it's more of an information problem than anything, because I think if somehow we had perfect information where I could tell, okay, that property is going to be used in I don't know how many times, then obviously you'd have no right to step on it. I think it's really more of an information problem than anything.
Yeah, it's not so much about the principle about is it owned or not. It's about how do you tell.
I think my view is if you see a piece of property that looks abandoned, you ask the neighbors, they don't know who owns it. If you go to a land claim association, they don't have it on record. You basically look around. I think at that point there's reason. I think you can reasonably say at that point you forfeited your claim. But if the squatter does go and find that it's owned by someone, even if it's completely deprecated, I don't think they could take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think the burden would be on the squatter to try to do everything he could to find out if the owner is still using the land or still going to come back and make use of the land. But again, I don't really have a good criteria for you on how to do that. What should a child do in their free time? Well, I guess that would be up to the parent, and if the parent doesn't mind, it should be up to the child. But of course, don't let the child, touch a hot stove or anything like that. Did
Hey,
someone
don't tell
just
me
drop
what's
off? Did
Sorry.
someone just drop off?
Did they?
I think Angry dropped off. Angry's not with us anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, you're here,
he is.
Rika.
He's back.
He's back. Hello, Rika.
Hey there.
How you doing?
Good. How about you?
Not bad.
There we go. I think I can hear other people now. Could be wrong.
Okay.
Let's see.
Did you hear Rika just now?
I can't speak the loudest.
Angry, did you hear Rika? Are you hearing me now? Hello, Angry.
I think I did. Yeah, I didn't.
Okay.
Okay, Angry
I
doesn't
hear
know what he's
Shane.
hearing and what he
was
isn't.
always- I was always able to hear Shane. I'm not sure about anyone else.
Oh, really?
I can hear Rika.
Okay.
Oh, I can't hear Rika. That's good.
Speaking louder.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yay. I don't know what happened. Google does not like me. That's all I can say.
Well, Google has political biases.
I'm trying to
Yep.
think. I'm trying to think of
I've
what
done
it was.
nothing to the Google machine.
It might have been the main BitTube developer, or
I'm an innocent
might
angel.
have been one of them. But one of them on the BitTube Discord earlier today said something like he was kind of being snarky, but he said something to the effect of, our mission is to stab Google in the eye. I kind of like that. He said it better than that, but it was something like that.
I always thought, anyone ever notice that out of all the search engines, Google has the nicest boobs?
What
never-
are you talking about?
Because the two O's are in the middle.
Oh,
I took that too literally.
yeah. We got plenty of boobs here. Hey,
There
there's
we
two
go.
Rikas. There's
Oh,
a pair
no.
of Rikas.
God,
Oh,
not
no.
another one.
Identical twins.
Oh, no.
Hello, second Rika. How you doing?
Oh, go away, other me.
You're not me.
What, do you drop off and have to come back on, but it never took your first connection away?
Yep.
Oh, Google, please spend lots and lots of time upgrading how your interface looks instead of actually solving the
Yeah.
problems.
Yes, and let's go make a gaming stream service instead. Fixing your YouTube issues.
Oh, there goes the first Rika.
There we go.
She is dead. A body has been discovered.
You are likely to be eaten by a grue.
Yep.
Sadly, the Sadly, besides Rika, the one other person who would have gotten that joke isn't here.
No one else got that reference. That's going way, way, way back.
How is John doing these days anyway? Johnny P?
Oh, he hasn't been on the live streams, but he's been posting now and then in the Discord, and sounds like he's doing okay, I guess.
Awesome.
Usually he's talking about gaming, so I don't watch every video on his channel, but he did one video, I think it was like earlier this week, that I'm trying to remember what it was about. But, but yeah, he's still out. He's still kicking.
That's good.
Okay. No dead air. Someone give me a topic.
All right.
Oh, I think I can.
Should we just roll the Coinable ad?
No, I think. I think maybe a further thing I'd say is.
Here we go.
I think on the positive obligations comment. I mean, I think positive obligations can only sensibly work if you have a negative right violation. So, for example, if you I think the classic one I seen is you throw someone in a lake, you've obligated to rescue them because you've basically put them in danger. So now you have to save them. The problem I have with that, maybe with the feeding your child analogy, is I don't see what rights are being violated by, I guess, bringing it into the world. So I mean, I just have an issue.
Well, the child.
Well, it's not so much that the rights are being violated as that you're the one responsible for the child being in the situation that the child is in.
Yeah, I mean, if you put someone in a box, you're kind of responsible, and you won't let, and they have no means of getting food in that box. You're responsible for bringing them food.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Although I think you could argue maybe before they got thrown in the box, they could have done it on their own. Whereas the problem with, I guess a child in this case is that it's kind of created out of the void and it's brought into. It's kind of the issue. It's just it doesn't really start from a state of independency. It kind of starts from a state of dependency.
Well, that's the point. It didn't have any choice being in the situation that it's currently in.
I mean, you are knowingly resulting in the creation of a being who will be a dependent.
And since you created that, then that being naturally becomes a dependent of you.
And by not putting the child up for adoption or opting for an abortion, you are in a sense agreeing that you are the one who will care for that dependent.
Because you always have an exit. You can, like you said, you can abort. You can put it up for adoption. At any point, you can say, "Hey, I don't want to raise this child anymore," and take it to an adoption center or whatever. And the fact that you haven't done that means that you are essentially forcing that child to remain in the situation, remain in your home. I'm getting an echo from someone, and it's very disorienting.
What the heck could that be?
Testing. Okay, I'm not getting it now.
I think that might have been me then.
Okay, we'll blame Daniel. We always blame Daniel.
Well, I guess.
By the way, Rika, have you checked out any of the podcasts?
I haven't had the chance to, but I will now since I have plenty of free time.
Yeah, also check out Shane's Quickie series, Atheism and Libertarianism. The Constitution lectures, though, they're pretty old.
Yeah, I've watched, I forget which one. I posted on Twitter the Introduction to Economics. I remember now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
watch them all with the airtime extension installed, and we'll both make money.
Oh, and you also posted
the school shooting one, how to react to or I forget what it's called.
Oh yeah, where I basically say, wait a couple of days before, really going in to find out what happened, because in those first couple of days you're going to get a lot of misinformation. You're probably still going to get misinformation after 2 days, but
I have noticed that.
Reminds me of this Dark Matter video where there's this shooting, but the shooter dies and they have this helmet stuck on their head.
I don't remember that one.
So the media is trying to figure out, okay, what group what ethnicity are they, so we can figure out how to spin this.
Oh, okay.
Well, there's an interesting comment in the chat for Shane. It says, "What are your thoughts on Michel Foucault and Jacques Derrida?"
I know the names, but it's one of those cases where I can't pull them up. Michel Foucault is different from, I think it was Jean something Foucault, the guy who did the Foucault pendulum. That's a different Foucault. I'm trying to remember which one Michel Foucault is.
I can tell you.
Yeah, someone's going to have to remind me who those guys are.
Yeah. Trying to figure out, but I don't know.
I mean, they're both those guys are prolific postmodern. I think
there we
just
go.
don't know that much about them.
Yeah, I think of the last name Foucault. I think of the Foucault pendulum guy, and I hear the last name Derrida. I think of Curly Joe.
Wait, Derrida, as in the postmodernist?
Yes, the deconstructionist guy.
I'm more of an Umberto Eco guy.
Yeah. Gotta love all the postmodern deconstructionists there.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
fun.
Okay. That's who we there. Okay, that's right.
Yeah, I know I've read stuff about them before, but I can't really pull them up in my mind to talk about them with any degree of sense.
Oh, what do you think about wars like World War II? Was it okay for the U.S. to draft people? I think did we already say this? Ration resources, bomb civilians, and other things to beat. I don't even know remember how to say that. It's been so long since I've studied World War stuff.
So slavery is wrong, so you can't draft people.
So
That's
sorry.
Just period. End of statement.
Well, I guess
rationing only had to happen because they engaged in price fixing, which they shouldn't have done to begin with. Which only happened because they inflated the currency, which they shouldn't have done to begin with.
Was World War II justified?
World War II it's really difficult to answer because it was really an extension of World War I. There was just that 20-year ceasefire. But it was pretty much the same war.
I actually have a confession to make. I'm a time traveler trying to prevent World War V.
Oh, which one are we on now?
Yeah, right?
Are you trying to find someone as a baby to kill who's going to grow up and be a dictator? Or?
No, of course not. I'm not a barbarian.
No. Okay.
That will require a heavy degree of determinism, too.
I'm just going to teach them about economics.
Hey, is Ancapistan a thing in your time?
Yes, actually. It's doing pretty well.
Have the AIs taken over the world?
Yeah, but we're kind of... There's not much distinction anymore, so, we figured you can't beat them, join them.
There's only one I know.
Ayabihara?
Yup. That too.
I guess one thing I can bring up is so I think one thing that I found with the NAP that it does. I mean, what was I gonna say? So if you're in a situation, let's say, where the entire world's going to blow up and all you have to do is basically shoot one guy dead, which is obviously a egregious violation of the NAP. Would you do it or would you not? Because if you took the NAP to its logical extreme, then you would just let the entire world self-destruct. So...
Yeah.
Well, the point is, though, I mean, does it ever become a reductio ad absurdum?
Well, I mean, in the strictest terms, unless that guy is the one who's going to push the button and blow up the world, I don't know why it would work to kill anyone else. But
Yeah, I mean, the thing with these sort of lifeboat scenarios is they never really explain why A leads to B.
Yeah, they never seem to want to say how we got into the situation to begin with.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think I would say with any lifeboat scenario pros, whether it's trolleys, planes, flagpoles, whatever you come up with, I think you would have to maybe say, okay, so what's your ethical system? How do you get to that point? Just a second.
Like, first, how did we get here? Second, why would shooting this one guy solve the problem?
Right.
Yeah, we kind of need the chain of causality here to know who's actually starting the war, who's the aggressor, and what. Yeah.
There are times when a single snail can make a world go extinct.
Yeah, I wouldn't take that much. It depends. Really.
Or, just a bored high school girl.
Yup. Oh.
How did that go? For want of a nail, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the rider was lost. For want of a rider, a message was lost. For want of a message, a battle was lost. For want of a battle, a war was lost. For want of a war, a kingdom was lost, and all for the want of a nail.
Yeah.
Crazy Fella says he is no snail. Okay, we'll take your word for that, fellas.
Yeah,
no snail.
Yeah, and I'm not a ditto mimicking a human slowly trying to take over the human race.
And I am not a lab mouse involved in an elaborate scheme to try to take over the world.
Which reminds me, what are we doing tomorrow night, Shane?
Oh.
Same thing we do every night.
Welcome to the world of tomorrow.
I guess one comment is so if you apply the positive obligation to the I guess when the child is presumably born, couldn't you argue that when you conceive that you are doing exactly the same thing as in the case of a child, assuming it's a consensual and wanted one?
Could you repeat that?
I heard some of it, but I heard it, but I didn't understand it.
So if we take if you take the positive obligation idea that if you bring a child into the world, it's going to be helpless, you have to help it.
Yeah.
Couldn't you apply that when it was conceived? I mean, why couldn't you just apply that to when it was conceived? Because it's presumably not that different of an act.
If you could put it instantly in an incubator, then I think you could. But as long as we're assuming you're the woman in this scenario and you're pregnant. As long as it's you still have your bodily autonomy. And so you have just as you have the right to put a baby up for adoption, you have a right to eject the fetus. And if the fetus can't survive, outside the womb, well, that's going to result in an abortion, but you still have your bodily autonomy.
So are you a evictionist on the matter then?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
So this is a position by Walter Block. So his idea is that if you can remove a fetus without having to kill it, then you're obligated to. But if you can't, then you're allowed to just eject it and kill it anyway. So
yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas
because it's still your body, and you get to give up that obligation at any point. And after that point, whatever happens is not on you because you've given it up.
Whereas I think Rothbard actually argued that it didn't have any rights until it was actually born.
I forgot. I'd have to read that section of Ethics of Liberty again. He went into it, but I mean, he went a lot further than I would. That basically all you would have to do to give up your parental obligation is just not do anything, and you could let the child starve. But like I say, if you have brought the child into the world, that gives you some kind of responsibility for it.
Yeah,
I think
it doesn't have to be much, but it does have to be, the least bit of consideration that a trustee would have into a piece of property kind of thing.
I'm probably a little closer to esoteric and Konkin on a lot of these myself.
Well, I mean, I think that might be an inconsistency in Rothbard's. I mean, to me, I don't see that's different than, let's say you pick up an unconscious person on the street who's starving, and then you take them and you decide you don't want to tear them, so you just basically throw them in a cage and then they can't leave, or they'll just die. I mean, I don't see how that's much different.
Yeah, I mean, if you accept the starving person in your home and say, I'm going to feed you, then you need to feed them, or otherwise you can kick them out of your home. But you can't just keep them in your home but not let them eat.
Yeah, I agree. Another thing I seen in the chat: will jails still exist in a stateless society?
Robert Murphy has a good video on that. He kind of calls them hotels, but the idea is like we were talking earlier about being ostracized, and then the grocery stores won't serve you food or whatever if they find out that you murdered someone or whatever. Now you won't have really any way of living. No one will rent an apartment to you or whatever. Well, there's he says, well, there could be this place that you go and you just kind of sign up for, and then you'll live in there and you'll agree to, whatever restrictions they put on you, and they'll put you to work or whatever, and give you opportunities to rebuild your reputation, so that maybe one day you can rejoin society again. Or if you don't, you just, stay incarcerated there.
Would it be too cheesy if we called them gray bar hotels?
No. Also, it depends on what society's like. In the example, is it like The Walking Dead? Is it like normal?
Well, yeah. Rika, what they essentially mean is basically a society, a voluntary society without a state.
One where they've dismantled the state on purpose.
Oh, well, the apocalypse is pretty much.
Yeah. Well, it's like Hawkeye always said: if you burn down all the churches, you don't get atheism. If you destroy the government, you don't get anarchy, because anarchy is something that has to happen as a societal change. It can't just happen because the government collapses. Somalia wasn't an anarchy after government collapsed, because you had several people trying to have like 12 different governments all vying for control of it. So the problem actually becomes too much government, not instead of not enough.
I guess the question is, because states repeatedly have that cycle because because of the way states work, they can't last forever.
Yeah.
How would you prefer? I mean, how would you prevent another state from arising again? I mean, how do you stop the cycle?
Molyneux, back before he lost his mind, did a pretty decent video on this. Basically, as a stateless society becomes more accepted, it will require a lot. People will be a lot more vigilant about this sort of thing, and it'll take a lot more convincing to actually get one formed up.
Well, just remember, Chicago might be a separate state.
Well, and I mean, anyone who is actively trying to start a state is basically someone who is actively trying to initiate force. They're committing an act of aggression, and anyone has the authority is not the right word, but the legitimacy or whatever to stop them. Hang on a second, my phone's ringing.
Yeah, literally anyone has legitimacy to stop a new state.
It definitely seems like they want to set Chicago and separate from the state of Illinois.
Actually, where Chicago gets its name? Interestingly enough, it's a Native American word for a local garlic plant.
Right, like Chicago being its own thing. Yeah, I don't know.
Read the Dresden Files. Also, we're most of us here, fair warning, Rika, we're probably a lot more radical than you are.
Okay, I'm back.
I mean, I definitely Don't know. I would maybe consider it.
We're going over, but I can probably stick around another 10 minutes or so because
My
sounds
bad.
like we got a good number of people here and a good conversation going.
I guess one question I can probably state is, are you guys thin libertarians or thick libertarians? So, do you believe...
I'll have you know I'm losing weight. I've lost 5 pounds.
I know one of us is definitely thick. You know who you are.
Well, no, I mean...
Well, let's face it. We can all be a little thick sometimes, can't we?
Sometimes.
Ronan.
Well, I guess...
All of which is my way of saying I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the idea, thin quote libertarians, they basically believe that all you need are, like, once you've got your private property rights and you've got your non-aggression principle, anything else goes beyond that. So if you want to, like, there's just no other cultural values beyond that. And then thick libertarians believe that you need both of those, but then there are additional cultural values you might need.
So thicks sound a little uncomfortably close to Hoppians.
Yes,
Yeah.
Hop is a classic. He basically believes that you basically need to return to like a very traditional, very rigidly structured hierarchical side. And then the other thick variety of libertarians, like the left libertarians, are like Long, Chartier, a few others like that, who basically believe that you might want to actually go the opposite way with basically a completely flat society.
By a flat society.
I think if you're going to be consistent with the non-aggression principle, you're not going to say that society should be one way or the other, and you would let society organize itself how it will, from the bottom up without forcing anything on it. So yeah, society probably is going to have, its own point of view and its own values, and it might be religious or it might be atheistic, or it might, have all of these different viewpoints about, our attitude towards the future. Should we be colonizing space, or should we be just staying here at home? And, what's our attitude towards, new technologies or whatever? All of that stuff is just going to come from the minds of the individuals that make it up. But as soon as you try to say it needs to be one thing or the other, then that is when you become inconsistent with the non-aggression principle.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of sympathies towards long school thought, but I would ultimately have to side with Shane on this and go for a thin approach.
Yeah, well, I think the reason why Hop might, I think the reason why I think it's because I think Hop thinks that you need a significant, I think you basically need the significant traditional cultural order. Otherwise, if you don't have that in place, then private property rights and the NAP aren't going to get respected in the long term, and it'll just go back to a state society again. So I think the idea is that you can't just have them alone, that you actually need other things to reinforce them.
Well, I mean, I think you are going to have to do certain things like educate your kids about the NAP and why it's important and things like that. But
which reminds me, I believe they make a book about that now.
Yeah.
Devin Rojas, have you read or watched any of Larkin Rose's content? Larkin Rose is awesome.
Oh, of course we've watched Larkin Rose. Rika, you have to watch Larkin Rose.
Oh, man.
Larkin Rose is
Definitely.
the person.
Wait, what were you saying?
Larkin Rose is...
What were you saying, Rika?
I said definitely seems interesting. My bad. My voice is hoarse. Everyone's sick here, and I got it.
Doesn't seem much
I
different
became
from
an ANCAP because of Larkin Rose.
I actually became an ANCAP because of Hawkeye, but Larkin Rose really radicalized me.
Hawkeye.
Oh,
Hawkeye was kind of the one who convinced me to take on the term anarchist. He didn't change my beliefs, but he kind of changed my attitude towards the word.
I didn't know a superhero could change you, Tinu.
No. It's a friend of ours, Tim Dyson.
Lord Hawkeye, yeah.
He's a YouTuber.
Okay, I found it.
And by the way, before he was a superhero, he was a soldier in Korea, and before he was a soldier in Korea, he was a Mohican. So
It would depend on which Korea, but
So was he the last one, or?
See, I never really understood that part because wouldn't Chingachgook be one of the? So it's like there were two last. I don't know.
I'm not a voluntarist.
But I mean, well, Hawkeye wasn't natively a Mohican, right? Because he was a white guy who had kind of been adopted into the
Wait, what
culture,
was
if I
that?
remember correctly.
What was that about voluntarism, Rika?
Someone was asking
Asking
if
if
I
you're-
was.
yeah. I think you're a minarchist, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that sounds about right. I would have to look up all these terms.
Don't worry.
Okay, now here's the basic question, Rika. Which voluntary peaceful activities would you want someone to forcefully intrude on?
Oh,
That's just putting it plain and simple right there.
And if the answer is none, then congratulations, you're a voluntarist.
Exactly, yeah.
pretty much. I would have to say none.
Then congratulations, you're a voluntarist.
Yep, there you go.
Well, 6 months is usually. I think the phrase is usually 6 months.
Yeah, the difference between a minarchist and an anarchist, 6 months.
I mean, actually, I think ironically, I was actually converted to anarchy by a minarchist. Kind of. I think I came into the anarchy from more of a initially more of a consequentialist perspective, but then I kind of adopted more of the deontology because I thought that was more rigorous and consistent with the actual beliefs.
I had an interest in minarchy, but then Don Knotts really convinced me to get into it.
Don Knotts?
Yeah.
How did he do that?
Sorry, I just a little dig at your voice.
Oh, okay. Andy! Can I have a bullet for my gun if I keep it in my shirt pocket?
Actually, when I first started looking into libertarianism, the first video I ever encountered was your "Are You a Libertarian?" video.
Oh, man.
Oh, that's going way back.
Way back in the day. I think I looked that up and I found it way old.
All right, we are going to have to wrap it up. So why doesn't everyone give their final thoughts?
Rika, actually, this would be a good time if to insert some promotion if you would be interested.
I stream on Twitch. It is Rika X Nipa. If I can post it, it'd probably be easier.
Yeah, send me the link and I'll put it in the downstairs
thing.
box.
Oh, I'll post it in here.
Okay.
There's all kinds of other stuff you can click on there, like socials and all that. I have a Patreon page, so it's the same. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do with it, but
yeah, she's a variety streamer, though she's sort of forming a niche for more like JRPGs and the like. And I help moderate the channel when I can. So
cool. Angry, you still there? You got anything to say before we go? Okay, he's not there. Darth, you got anything you want to sign off with?
Trust your techno lust.
Okay. Ludbard or Pakna or whatever your name is?
Other one. I changed the name because I wanted to incorporate as many Austrians in my name, but
I noticed that.
Yeah, keep looking into Austrianism. That's all I'm going to say. I don't really have much of a promotion here.
All right, well, I guess that's it. It just leaves to me to thank everyone who participated, thank everyone who commented. And...
I am here, by the way.
And sorry.
Okay, there we are.
And sorry for doing my usual and injecting a little chaos in here.
We love the chaos. We're anarchists. We love chaos.
All the despair.
And as usual, thank you for watching this. Please hit like, subscribe, and check out donate.pagosity.tv for all the ways you can support this channel. We'll see y'all.
That was good. Like, really good.
That was good.
Use that for some voice acting.
Oh, Ricky, you have to hear me do the idiot extraordinaire.
Oh, God. Just basically check out anytime he's been on the podcast for that.
Either me or Johnny P.
All right, so long, everyone.
I
Until
can't
next
hear
time.
anyone. I warn you. So
Okay.
What?
Until next time,
Exactly.
stay strong.